The digital studio at the Northside Branch of the Lexington Public Library is a local treasure for its space, equipment, software, and staff. I'm Tom Hailey, and this is the Bluegrass Region Voices and Views podcast. If you're an aspiring creator, this information is for you. For this episode, I recorded the introduction and the closing at my home studio. I recorded the interview at the Northside Digital Studio in their new podcasting space with their new top-level professional equipment. I'm talking with Bryan Klausing, the studio manager. We'll learn a little about him and then get into specifics about the studio and what you can create there. Join us as Bryan is telling us about where he was born and raised.
So I was born in Lexington, Kentucky, and let's see, and then right around preschool, we moved to Louisville, so I grew up there. Went to grade school at St. Stephen Martyr, and then in high school we moved to the suburbs in Oldham County, and my dad had an architecture firm out there, so we moved a little out there, but we're still kind of in the Louisville metro area. And then, and that's where I grew up.
How did you end up in Lexington now?
Well, so I went to the University of Kentucky and studied arts administration. And so after I graduated, I got a job working for Michael Jonathan at Poet Man Records, who's, of course, the host of the Woodsong's Old Time Radio Hour. I had an internship with him before that, and so then I got offered a job and have kind of just been in Lexington ever since.
So that was your first job out of college, was
that
working
was
with Michael? Wow.
That was my first job, yeah. So, yeah, he actually came to one of our arts administration classes. It was a professional class to where they would come in and talk about what they did. And Michael, I'm very passionate about music, and still am. And, just everything that he was talking about just like really resonated with me. And then my advisor, when it came time for me to figure out an internship, suggested that I go check out Michael's radio show that had just started taping on North Broadway in Kevin Johnson's little recording studio called Planet 3. And so went out there, and I think Homer Ledford, legendary dulcimer maker and musician, was one of the performers, and then just I said, "Yep, this is perfect for what I wanted to do."
Define arts administration as a major. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the business side of the arts. What appealed to me about it was that I was going to get those business administration management kind of classes in addition to the arts class. Mm-hmm. So then you picked an emphasis, in one of the fields like, art, dance, music, or theater. So I felt like that was kind of a well-rounded, education to where I could do different, elements with that while still nurturing that creative spark that I had.
And it's obviously paid off for you and our community here.
Well, thank you.
So that's great. Well, how did you get interested in audio and video and other digital technology on top of your interest in music?
It's funny. I'm in the process of digitizing some old videotapes from my parents, and my dad and mom, they had a camera, and we would do like magic tricks or like fake talk shows and that kind of thing. And I remember earlier as a kid, but even before that, I would have my cassette player and pretend like I was a DJ, and so and then like going into high school, like I said, I was very passionate about music. I started playing guitar because I felt that call and that kind of push to it. And so that progressed to me starting a band with some of my friends. And the next step then was we were writing songs, and then we wanted to record them. So then I kind of got introduced to like multi-track recording and microphones, and doing sound stuff like in live settings, and then as I worked my way through college, I was on the students activity board at UK, so I did concerts with the Indigo Girls, and then working with professional crews. And then, of course, that set me up for, working with Michael Jonathan and working with, doing it professionally, with some of the legends of, the music like Emmylou Harris or Brandi Carlile, or, any number of the, the great artists that have appeared on the show, and working with, the crew. That were, even though it's all volunteer run, we had quite a number of people that had expertise in that matter. So you're just picking up that and learning about video editing, and just keep adding skills, because I had all these great people around me. So it was very fertile ground for me to kind of pick up on that. And it's funny just kind of looking back, when I go back and look at my childhood, how I was already kind of set up for that, just kind of doing it on my own. And now here I am all these years later, and that's my profession.
So what age were you as a child when you were playing with your cassette recorder, and acting like you were a DJ or something?
Like really early, like maybe 7 or 8.
Oh my!
I mean, I would be like Casey Kasem, doing like a top 10 countdown of my songs, and I would have 2 cassette players kind of set up to where I could play the song, and then I could also record my voice on it, and just kind of. Just trying to figure, just make do with what you got, which, was a great life lesson because that's, we do that all the time at Wood Songs, and like any of the creative fields is, you make do with what you have, and then you just trying to figure out like the best way to, make the quality, because you can make high quality stuff, even when you're limited on budget or equipment or that kind of thing, especially if the content's great.
Mm-hmm. And especially today with the equipment
that
is available for a pretty good price at all kinds of places.
Yeah, I think that's been the big, the big change from it's the accessibility of that, to where that has opened, it up for anyone to kind of jump in. And figure, if you put the work into it and you're, curious, and then you can definitely, do a podcast or, start or record an album or do YouTube content. I mean, it's all there for you. You just have to, kind of navigate it, and then ask the right questions or find the right people to help kind of guide you.
I think probably the key word is digital rather than analog back in the days where people had to literally cut tape and those types of things.
That's wild to think about, like Brian Wilson and the Beatles and that level of multi-tracking that they were doing, in order to get the sounds. But that goes back to just like the ingenuity of well, this is what I have to work with, but I'm hearing something different. So like, how do I do that? And then just experimenting until you're kind of satisfied with it.
Well, that brings us to our major topic, talking about digital, which is the digital studio here at the Northside Library. Tell us how you began your career here, and what does the digital studio offer the community?
Yeah, the digital studio is a incredible resource for the Lexington community. It started back in 2008 when this building opened. They had made the recording space and some of the other spaces, and the library has done a great job with upkeep and adding to it, because the community has responded and that this is needed. So the neat thing about it is that if any kind of digital media project, if you don't know how to do one, but you want to, we have the equipment, we have the spaces, we have the software, and then we have people, and most importantly, we have the people that can show you and kind of guide you through that. So if, for instance, if you came to me and said, hey, I want to, start a podcast, then, I would be like, great, Tom, let's do it. And I would sit with you and kind of show you the equipment, kind of show you how it works, get you where you're in a comfortable spot to where you can record. And then I kind of step out and let you record. And then you could come back and say, well, that was fantastic. Now I don't know how to edit it. I'm like, great. Well, let's set up another appointment. We can do that. So, so in the studio we have a audio booth that's sound treated and professionally graded out, where we have local authors come in and do audio book versions of their books that upload up to Amazon and Spotify. And then we have a production studio that has a green screen and lighting and cameras. So if you're interested in photography or making YouTube content or music video, that's a very flexible space to where you can go in and just kind of make it to whatever project that you're wanting to do. Then we have a Mac lab that has like the full Adobe Creative Suite. In addition to professional software like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro, the Adobe software has like Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and Premiere Pro. So, all these professional, very expensive software, is available for you after you've taped or photographed or, to where then you can then take it and then use it. And the space is very collaborative. So oftentimes, we'll have people that are professionals at it, and then people that are just kind of getting started, and you'll see them helping one another or talking and asking questions. That's where like it really gets special is those interactions or people sharing what they're doing and people getting jobs. All that is kind of possible within the studio.
Well, so I've learned something here that I didn't know. I was thinking of the digital studio as being sort of amateur hour for people such as myself that are not professional, that are not making an audio book that's going to be published. It's just a hobby cast type of a thing. But what I just learned is that you do have people coming in to record audiobooks that are going to be on Amazon. I mean, professional type. Tell us more about the professional types of projects that are done here, and I don't know if you can give us names or not, but just kind of flesh that out a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a documentary filmmaker that it comes in the studio frequently. His name is Eli, and he had a documentary that aired on KET on Jim Sleet. But he's working on another documentary, and he comes in here very frequently. I mean, just kind of looking out the window, I see Ward. He's a professional photographer and videographer. He's been doing a lot of events with 250 Lex. Lots of musicians coming, and recording albums, in the space. And then the authors, doing audiobooks, and kind of guiding them through the very stringent technical requirements, needed to get their work on Amazon.
So if a professional is coming in to record an audiobook or musicians are coming in to record an album, is there a fee for that?
No.
My goodness,
no.
Really?
This is your tax dollars at work.
Okay.
This is a resource for the community. to where any of the spaces you can reserve up to 4 hours during the weekday and then 2 hours on the weekends, as long as the studio is staffed. And so, we're currently in our newest space, which is the podcast studio. And this is it's a professional space. As I was kind of researching it, I went for like industry standard stuff. So we have the Rodecaster Pro. We're using Shure microphones. We're using, the software that people use. If people wanted to add the video element to their podcast, we have a 4K webcam. It has the sound treated walls. So, anytime that we're adding, that kind of equipment, or a space to it, things are very researched because we want to be, this is a community resource, and we want to be very mindful of, how we spend those dollars, and we want to make sure that we're providing what the community needs. And the reason why we added the podcast studio is because our audio booth, our main recording space, was booked so much that we needed another space. And part of the reason that it was booked so much is because of the increase of podcasting and the popularity, to where people were coming in and wanting that. And, the audio booth, can comfortably hold about 2 to 3 people, whereas this studio, we can probably get like 6. So, it's more spread out. It feels a lot more comfortable. And so now I got both spaces that people can book.
No, this is a beautiful space. I'd want to put some pictures on that go with my podcast of the studio.
Yeah, and a big shout out to our facilities team, Mike Conley and Marvin and the rest of them that put this together, because they are magic workers. And anytime you see like, as you go to the different branches. I mean, I don't think their work is always recognized, but especially on the little details, like the cable runs and those kinds of things. So they did a fantastic job, making this room look professional.
Do you mind if I ask where you found the equipment? What's a good resource for people?
We have an agent that at Sweetwater. And they are fantastic. So, it's always, it's good to have that personal contact, even though you could just go to the website and order it. So that might be something, for someone just kind of getting started, you could purchase it on Amazon for probably the same price, but it might benefit you, especially down the road, to kind of establish a relationship with a company like that, especially when prices are so close, because that extra customer service, because I was able to ask, some very, details as I was researching it. It's like, well, what can this camera do? And that kind of thing to kind of help me, kind of lock in on what we needed to get.
Yeah, I've used Sweetwater myself over the years. They are really good. Well, what advice would you have for someone who is thinking, they're just beginning to think about starting a audio podcast?
I would say, so you're gonna have that voice tell you that this is not a good idea, and it's gonna, but you also have that voice probably at that point that's telling you that you need to do it, and that's why you're kind of investigating. So you need to listen to that voice and not the one that's telling you that you can't. And probably one of the things that the voice that's saying that don't do it is saying is, well, you don't have any technical knowledge, or you can't, you don't know the equipment, so it's not going to sound good. That's not true. So, and that's one of the amazing things about, coming here to the studio. Even if you don't end up recording all your episodes here, this is a great way for you to try out the equipment, to get behind the on professional microphones and professional equipment to see how your voice sounds. And then to kind of start to get a feel for it, to where you can kind of build some confidence that will push you through, getting into, multiple episodes. So my next piece of advice is the next thing that I hear when people do that is like, well, I hate the sound of my voice. I'm like, well, you need to get over that. Don't pay any attention to the how your voice sounds. You pay attention to the content of what's going out, and then your delivery. So, because you're a storyteller, so you're telling stories, and you're trying to convey, feelings or emotions or knowledge or whatever that part of it is. So pay less attention to the quality of the voice, and pay more attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it and those kinds of things. And the third thing that I would say is that do your homework before you even turn on the microphone. Prep out what you want to do, because that's going to save you so much time, and get a higher quality recording that you'll be able to work with. Because you may have heard the saying, well, we'll just fix it in post. Well, when people say that, that's true. You can fix it in post. But oftentimes, fixing it in post is like 2 to 3 times longer than if you would have done, a couple of simple tweaks at the very beginning of your podcast. So, just doing, having a good outline and kind of knowing where you're going will save you, to where your narrative is making sense kind of going through it. If you have a guest on, you want to research. If you have the governor of Kentucky on, and then you're not going to say, oh, well, you were born in Illinois, because that wouldn't look good. So, kind of research, and have that kind of mindset going into it. And then do all this is before we even hit record, do a good quality sound check, use, good proper miking techniques to where you're kind of right in the microphone, you're using headphones. All that's going to save you time to where, like, when you're done recording, it's going to be easier for you to put the podcast together, and it's going to feel less like a chore. Because the point of this and doing anything creative is that you wanted to do this. You're feeling some kind of pull, creatively to either do music or dance or storytell, but you can get bogged down by it feel like too much, like, oh, this is like my job. I don't want to, I don't feel like doing this. It should be fun. It should be something that you enjoy to do. So taking those little steps, will benefit in making you want to come back and turn them and get back into the microphone.
After a person has their podcast done and it's published or posted or dropped or whatever people say these days, do you find that there's value in going back and listening to it yourself, listening to what you did, and are there some lessons that people learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, even if you don't go back and listen to it, you probably have already mentally making notes in your mind. Well, next time I'll know to ask that question. I think the publishing or putting the finishing touches on something is like a very important stage of the creative process, because you need a little distance from because when you're in the midst of it all, you're thinking about just like well, what am I going to say, researching questions, and then you're in the editing process, and you probably listened to the same thing 2 or 3 times, and it's all that's kind of going on to where once you take a step back from it and have a little bit of distance, even if it's just 1 to 2 days or even an hour, that kind of can get you like, oh, next time I'll know, I need to be this closer to the microphone, or you'll pick up on things, and that's how we grow as artists.
One thing I've learned by listening to the episodes I do is to do what I'm trying to do right now as we're talking, and that's for me not to go, like the types of things we do to acknowledge that we're hearing someone, because that can make the editing a little bit rough sometimes to deal with that.
I'm very guilty of that, and that is a skill that you will build the more that you're in front of a microphone. I mean, it's like public speaking, I mean, or any of those kinds of things. The more that you do it, the more the work you put into it, you're going to get better. Where you are at your first couple episodes will not be where you end up episode 10 or episode 20 or episode 100. You're going to grow and you're going to get better as you improve your skills and figure out ways to improve your craft.
Do you go out into the community and do presentations about podcasting and about the digital studio? Or
yeah, we try to do outreach quite a bit, and so I'll meet with Jennifer's Lexington Podcasters Group for their weekly lunch meetups, but any kind of those kinds of opportunities, I'm definitely looking for it. I've done community colleges or job fairs and that kind of thing. We also offer classes in the studio to where you can have guided help. Usually they're like a workshop. It's in all the areas of focus of the studio. So that includes audio stuff. So that's podcasting and music, video, photography, design, and then 3D printing. And so we offer regular monthly classes and where we're kind of rotate through all those. So that's another good way. And then we also bring in subject matter experts from the community to teach workshops. So like I had when Michael Jonathan came to my class and lit a spark for me, I'm looking for that kind of opportunity for members of the community where they can see, well, that's how that person got there. It's not, I can see the path, and now they have a way to kind of navigate that.
Sure. Well, you touched on photography. Just take a minute and tell us a little bit about that. I know it's not podcasting, but I'm interested in photography. So.
Yeah. So in our production studio, we have a mirrorless camera that folks can come in and use, and we have the lighting. It's a big space, to where people can do portrait photography, product photography.
Wow.
And we have backdrops and that kind of thing. So it's a great way, because this equipment is expensive. I think that's one of the barriers for folks, for any of, like podcasting or photography or that, you can't, it's hard to get, to get going in it because it's so much, because you not only have the equipment, but you need the software and that kind of thing. And that adds up quickly. But here at the library, you can come in and you can use that stuff for free. And you can get, you can build your resume. You can have a portfolio of work, by putting and using the library equipment to where then you can go get a job, and start to get, work, and then you'll have something, and then and all of a sudden you have a portfolio with work history, and then you can go, and kind of go from there.
I think too, even if a person can afford the equipment and is interested in having the equipment, a lot of people don't have a quiet space in their home or their office to do this type of activity, but they can come here and it's perfectly quiet.
Oh, for sure. I know I don't currently in my house. I don't. It would take some doing, especially for some like a photography where you actually need some space to kind of move around. That would be difficult, right? Currently. So we have a nice size, large room to where you can do that. And people can come in and use our equipment.
Well, what hours is the digital studio open?
Sure. The digital studio is open Monday through Thursday, 9:30 to 6:30, and then Friday, 9:30 to 5:30, and then Saturday, 9:30 to 4:30, and Sunday, 1 to 4:30. And then any of the spaces that you would want to book, you can book up to 4 hours on the weekdays, and then 2 hours on the weekends. So that's the podcast studio, the production studio, the audio booth, and we have one other space called the video editing booth, which is a more kind of a quiet workspace. Oftentimes if you're like editing with someone, or that's a nice space to work, or if you just want to get out of the main lab. People also use that for kind of digitizing old media. So that's another service that we have, to where you could bring in your old VHSs or cassettes or vinyl or slides or negatives, and digitize and preserve, those family histories.
Okay. How does a person get an appointment?
The best way is to just call the studio directly, and that number is 859-231-5500, extension 2407. You can also go to the library website and then look for the digital studio page. That's going to show you all our upcoming classes. It will also have that phone number on there.
Great. Wonderful. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we close with what I call the Bluegrass Region highlights? So,
I think I would just say that, if you're hearing, like I said, that voice, whether it's, like you should do a podcast, or you should record, or you should pick up an instrument, you pay attention to it, and it's probably going to repeat itself. So, I think as I gotten older, especially on like different projects, I'll hear that, and I'm like, sometimes I'll ignore it. I'm like, okay, no, not now, but it will come back, and then so if you're hearing that kind of thing, then you should pay attention to it, and kind of at least hear it out, and then and if it turns out that you're interested in doing some kind of a media project, this is a great place to start, to where you can, build some confidence, get some experience, even if you don't end up recording here all the time or working here all the time, just to be able to ask some preliminary questions, and to, just talk it through. I think that's one of the, like the coolest part of my job is when I'm working, when I'm mentoring and coaching someone, oftentimes I think I'm probably the first person that they've told what they want to do, outside of their, outside of their, maybe immediate family. That's a big responsibility on my part, to where, I feel like, I need to not only show them the technical know-how or whatever that, but give them, the confidence that, you can do, you can do this. So mentoring and coaching is a big part of that.
Yeah. Digital and life coaching studio.
Absolutely.
Love it. Well, I always close my podcast, or I try to, with these two, what I call Bluegrass Region highlights. The first is, what is your favorite locally owned coffee shop or restaurant? And the second is, what is a local venue or activity you would take an out-of-town guest to show off our local culture? So coffee shop or restaurant?
Let's see. Over the weekend, my daughter performed at the Lexington Opera House as part of 42nd Street. She was in the pre-show player. So afterwards, we went to Sorella's over on Jefferson Street, and they have great gelato, like homemade. They're using all local ingredients, and it was a hot summer day. I had a lemon sorbet. It was so delicious. So that was good. A Crank and Boom is also a good ice cream treat, and then I also like North Lime Donuts in the Great Line Station.
Well, I'm hungry now.
I know.
Right.
Yeah, lots of great treats in Lexington.
Thank you for that. Then what's a local venue or activity you would take an out-of-town guest to show off our local culture?
Well, I'm going to have to say Wood Songs. Having worked there, for 20 plus years and have done over 1,000 shows, it is an amazing Central Kentucky presence, and story, of what the Volunteers and Michael has built. And then going down to the Lyric Theater, which of course, back when it opened, had musicians like Cab Calloway and Dizzy Gillespie and B.B. King and Ray Charles all perform. So, you really get the, being in that venue with that kind of legacy, while it's still being used in a new way, it's really special. And Wood Songs goes out to over 500 radio stations across the country, and it's on American Forces Radio Network. It's on KET and PBS stations, around the world. So, being you as an audience member are a part of the sound that goes out around the world. So, that's a very unique experience.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
What a great way to close out our conversation. And so glad that I met you at Lexington Podcasters at a meetup there. And I'm going to be coming over to your studio more often here. So thank you so much.
Well, you're invited anytime, Tom. And just someone of being one of the first podcasters in Lexington, it's an honor to have you in the space. And, and I think that's another cool thing about, I think, as I talked about Wood Songs, the same thing applies here into the studio, like all that creative energy that's within the space. And, you're taping your episode and there are all these other podcasters on, musicians and photographers, and, just that energy, all in this one space. It's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, well, I wish this had been here in 2007 when I did my first podcast. So, well, thank you so much. And I look forward to our friendship growing over the years.
Same here.
Thank you. I hope you've been inspired to act on your idea of creating a podcast or video project, or record an audiobook, transfer media from VHS tapes or cassettes to digital, or the other possibilities Bryan mentioned. The lack of money for equipment or space to work is no longer a reason to pause your project. Get on over to the digital studio and press record. Links are in the show notes on my website at bluegrassregionvoicesandviews.com/studio.